Okay, what we've got here is a movement called a leg press. It's one of the many exercises you can see people doing that can cause anterior compression on the front side of the vertebrae by losing neutral. Miles is going to demonstrate this movement correct, where he doesn't allow the hips to roll up, but watch how he performs this movement. As he brings the negative down, you can see there's a stopping point on this pin that doesn't allow the hip joint to roll up. Now here's a way he can effectively work the legs, but at the same time not cause any type of compression to the lower lumbar. And again, you can see the range of motion. There's a stopping point that's not allowing his hips to rock up. If his hips don't rock up, he can hold a neutral back as he works his legs. Again, it's about working the muscle without any orthopedic stress to the spine. Okay, now here's a demonstration of the movement done wrong, where Miles is going to exaggerate the legs into the chest, where you see the hip joint rock up. You'll see it, Miles? You see him bringing the bar down, bending the knees, bringing the knees deep into the chest, and watch his hips tilt up when he goes down to a severe right there stay. Now push up. Now that little hip roll is what causes the anterior compression in the lower back. This is what we don't want to promote. So no matter how much more range of motion he is, when that hip joint rocks up, he's putting severe compression on the front side of the spine that causes orthopedic harm. So you can see the hips rolling up is what we don't want. That range of motion is too excessive. Okay, when you hear the term anterior compression, again, it's explaining the front side of the vertebrae having compression put on it that's exaggerated. Here's a common sit and reach test that's done all over the country to measure flexibility, but it causes the same degree of orthopedic harm as doing that leg press with the hips tilted up. Miles, lean over the roof, over your toes as far as you can, and hold that position right there. You can see with his back in a flexed state that he's got the same degree of anterior compression as he did doing the leg press wrong. All right, raise up, Miles. So this is a common test to test the mobility of the hamstrings and the mobility of the hip by keeping the knees straight as you lean over a ruler. Now another way of doing it that causes no orthopedic stress to the back is lay on your back, Miles. Lay flat on your back. Okay? Bend this knee, and lock this knee, and pick it up 6 inches off the floor. Now, when Miles locks the quadricep, it makes the hamstring relax. If Miles can keep this knee locked as he brings the leg up, we're trying to see how far can he bring the leg straight up, trying to get it 90 degrees without the knee. So bring it up slow. Keep the knee locked. Now this range, stop right there, back off just a little bit. Now lock the knee back out. That range is a range of motion that measures hamstring mobility. But at the same time, we don't have his lower back in a severe flex state. So here's a way of measuring hamstring mobility, but at the same time does not put any compression on the lower lumbar. All right, you can relax.
All right.
Now here's another common motion called a bent over row. And the key to the bent over row is to be able to hold a neutral back as you work the lats, the forearms, and the biceps in a pulling motion. You can see Miles's back is flat like a table, but the most important point on this movement is his lower lumbar curve is holding the neutral position. You don't see any flexion in the lower lumbar curve. Look how tight to the body the bar is staying. He's pulling more towards the stomach region, and the bar is staying tight to his shins as his arms go into a hang. Good job, Miles. That's it. All right, now Miles is demonstrating, keep your knees, another way you see people doing bent over rows where it is a rounded spine. And you can see when he's pulling the bar, it's still very dangerous because the spine is flexed. So by not having the head up in a bull neck, by not having the chest spread, by not being conscious of the lower back staying neutral, this is a position when he goes to even start to lift, there's severe anterior compression on the front side of the vertebrae. So no matter whether it's a sit and reach test, no matter whether it's a bent over row or a leg press, if we lose the neutral curve into a flexed spine, it causes severe anterior compression. All right, stop there. Good job.
Oh, hold on.
Okay, here's a common movement across the country that's used for upper body strength, the bench press. And we want to show that, watch how when Miles brings the bar down, he's making a conscious effort to keep the bar under control. And that's called eccentric strength. The importance of eccentric strength, bring it down and pause, Miles. Now push with speed. The importance of bringing the bar down with a controlled descent is to be able to keep stress off the joint, but also develop the strength that's needed to decelerate the body. So to do a bench press and to bring it down with a loose descent is to cause stress to be applied to all the soft tissue of the shoulder. So again, orthopedic harm to the cuff and all kinds of tendonitis, bursitis type related issues come from the movement being ballistic. Miles bringing the bar down with a controlled tight descent and holding it motionless is a way of keeping orthopedic harm off the shoulders. Now it's very commonplace to see people doing bench presses today, even in the NFL with the combines, with the thought that if there's not as much weight on the bar, you're safe. What we want people to realize is the faster that bar comes down in a ballistic manner, it's just like adding more weight to the bar. All right, put it up, Miles. Now I'm going to get you to demonstrate bringing it down. Now Miles is going to demonstrate this bench press in a ballistic manner that's commonplace, where there's no conscious thought of the negative being controlled. Watch how fast the bar comes down with a rebound. This loose descent, the faster that bar comes down with the loose descent, it magnifies the peak loading on the shoulder joint. And that's what we want to prevent. So it's a misconception that the lighter the weight on the bar, that this doesn't cause orthopedic harm. It's based on the faster that bar comes down in that loose descent. You can put it up, Miles. The faster that bar comes down in that loose descent, the more orthopedic harm that's being applied to the shoulder joint. Now here's an example. If we take this 10-pound weight, sit up, Miles, and he can feel the pressure of this 10-pound weight right here. And we hold this 10-pound weight right here at knee height, and we drop it. Well, that's the same thing that's happening when we take that 135 and with a loose descent, we bring it down with momentum. The stress being applied to the soft tissue of the shoulder is greatly magnified. This is what we're trying to get away from in all strength and conditioning programs, is to say getting stronger only matters if you get stronger in a way that you can develop eccentric as well as concentric. Okay, when we were going over the leg press, the sit and reach, and that bent over row, we were trying to show that regardless of what the movement pattern is, poor biomechanics is what causes anterior compression, that causes all the degenerative changes we see with the spine. This word neutral is describing the lower lumbar curve that's never supposed to be deviated from. So when you think of biomechanics, how you sit, how you stand, how you lift, it has to be done where the lower back holds a neutral curve. So doing exercises wrong when you lose the neutral curve is the same thing as sitting wrong all day long, or doing anything else that a physician would say you're walking with poor biomechanics. You're picking up tools, or you're doing work around the workplace where you're constantly using poor biomechanics. Well, it's the same thing in exercise. There's people that are doing things all day long that have poor biomechanics. So that's what the word neutral means, the ability to maintain that normal curvature. If you can hold a neutral back, there's no anterior compression on the front side of the disc wall, or no compression on the facet joint on the back part of the spinal column. So stress is evenly displayed if you're able to hold that curvature. And that's important because, again, there's things we do in exercise that because we look at range of motion as being so critical, more range of motion, that we actually encourage severe compression on the front side or the posterior side of the spine. Now here's a perfect example. Look at this man's shoulders 50 degree to hip with a neutral back. and this lifter shoulders 50 degree to the hip with a flex back. And you can see it's 630 pounds of compression that forces that jelly nucleus to migrate to the back. Now, it doesn't matter what the movement is that causes that to happen, whether it's sitting or whether it's lifting. It's what you choose to do. So this sit and reach test is a test that causes severe anterior compression. And if we want to measure the mobility of the hip joint based on the glute and the hamstring's elasticity, if we want to measure that, instead of causing orthopedic harm by leaning over the ruler repetitively, we could do it by laying down flat on your back and having a protractor on the back side of a wall at 25 degree, 50 degree, 75 degree, 90 degree. Nobody loses the neutral position of the lumbar as they work on keeping the knee locked, bringing the leg up straight, proving that the knee doesn't bend. Here's a more effective way of stretching the glute and hamstrings that doesn't cause any orthopedic harm. It's just not being practically applied. We're still teaching the sit and reach, and again, a movement pattern that teaches poor biomechanics. Recognizing that bench presses is a very common movement done all across the country to develop upper body strength of the chest, shoulders, and triceps. This is a slide to show that orthopedic stress on the shoulder joint is greatly enhanced by the manner in which we bench press. So where the head of this humerus fits right here in the glenoid fossa, the way the head of that humerus fits with the rotator cuff muscles and everything that stabilizes the shoulder, we've got to ask ourselves, what puts the most loading on that joint? And what you see here is the weight on the bar isn't what causes the most loading. It's the weight of the bar plus the maximum acceleration being brought down. So the faster this bar comes from lockout down to the sternum, whatever's on the bar becomes magnified based on the speed of the negative. Here's a novice lifter lifting 235 pounds with a very loose descent, 1.16 seconds. So that looks like a touch and go. The bar is brought down very ballistically. You can see by the time the bar touches the sternum, it's magnified to 363 pounds of force, even though it's not but 235 on the bar, based on the speed of the negative. Now here's an example of a 123-pound lifter lifting 305 pounds, but having the ability to bring it down with a slower descent. Look how the bar is only magnified 35 pounds. And here's another lifter who's lifting even more weight, 556 pounds on the bar, but can bring it down in 3 seconds of resistance. Look how the bar only magnifies 30 pounds. So having high levels of eccentric strength is what causes the body to have a protection against ballistic movement patterns that are done over and over and over. And this is the same thing with the knee joints. There's more and more ACL ligament tears today because we've got people producing forces that don't have enough decelerating strength, and what happens is the ligament tears. So if you got the muscle that can produce the force, but you don't have the muscle that can absorb it by decelerating, and that comes from not working on enough eccentric strength, this explains how, again, we're having more and more injuries in the field of strength and conditioning from the mistakes that we're making in the strength and conditioning, not emphasizing as much on the eccentric motion as we are on the concentric motion.